Welcome back to Unqualified Critics, and if you're checking us out for the first time, thanks for stopping by. Last week, we received a review unit from Gotrax, specifically their new XR Ultra scooter. Recently, Gotrax released two new models, the XR Ultra and also the XR. They're basically the same scooter, but the Ultra has a higher capacity battery. First, let's look at the stats. The Ultra has a 36-volt battery from LG with a capacity of 7 amp hours. The XR also has a 36-volt battery with a capacity of 5.2 amp hours. Now, when we look at the motors, we actually get different information from Gotrax website as opposed to the Amazon listing. But my understanding is both of these scooters use the same motor. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the stats from the Gotrax website, which reflects that these are the same motors. There's still a difference here in power. The XR Ultra provides 300 watts of average output with 430 watts maximum output versus the XR, which is 250 watts of average output and the same 430 watt max. Now, if you're not sure what all that means, voltage is what allows for power to flow to the motor. So the higher the voltage, the more power can potentially flow. And we can safely assume here that the 36 volt rating is not a constraint. So that's fine. Both batteries are equally equipped in that regard. Amp hours is of course the capacity of the battery, and the more amp hours, the more range you can get. Just like on your phone, you have a milliamp rating. The more milliamps, the larger your battery, the more you can handle things, all things equal. So where we see the biggest difference between these two scooters, in addition to a slight difference of power that the motor is set to, is of course range. The XR Ultra is rated for 16 miles from the manufacturer and the XR 12 miles. All the other specs and features are identical for both scooters. The top speed is governed at 15.5 miles per hour in both cases. We get 8.5-inch air-filled tires and 26.5 pounds. These scooters are rated for a max rider weight of 220 pounds and a waterproof rating of IP54, aka it can handle splashing water, but it's not really recommended that you ride it in the rain. For features, as I mentioned, both scooters are water resistant. We do get regenerative braking here. We also get physical and electronic braking, so two ways to brake. A 2-stage speed setting that you can set while you're riding or before you take off, cruise control, an LED headlight, and of course a bell. The bottom line, the XR Ultra offers about 25% more range and about 17% more power than the XR and costs an additional $100. The Gotrax XR Ultra is $399 currently, with the XR being $299. With that out of the way, how has it done in the real world with my testing? Well, it is currently winter here, so I did have to run this in far from ideal conditions. It's been about 20 degrees, which I estimate should reduce my range by about 25% over what I would get under normal non-freezing weather. I did clock in 10.39 miles. And while the scooter did not fully stop at that point, it did slow down to the point of basically being unrideable, so I just called it quits then. But given that it was freezing, you could assume that I could get about 13 miles in range if under more normal weather conditions. Now, I weigh 210 pounds, and I was wearing a lot of clothing to deal with the weather, so all in with clothing, I was likely right at that 220 pound limit that this scooter is rated for. So you can really think of this 13-mile range as worst case scenario. If you're 220 pounds or thereabouts, that's about what you can expect from the Gotrax Ultra XR. Now I will test the range again once the weather warms up and report back. I was on mostly flat ground. The elevation change was only 83 feet. Over quite a bit of space, so not more than a few percent grade incline. I was running with the headlight on most of the time and was in second gear the entire time for maximum speed. This scooter is far more comfortable to ride at that longer distance than my previously reviewed budget scooter, the Ion Voyager, due to its deck being about 1.5 times as wide and its larger air-filled wheels, which you would expect at a scooter at this price point. Although I was skeptical at first, given the really small size of the headlight, its brightness was actually very satisfactory, and I did most of my riding at night. For braking, the disc brake worked very well and was very smooth, but to be honest, I never figured out how to engage the electronic brake. I reached out to the manufacturer and I'm waiting to hear back, and I'll provide an update when I get a chance to test the electronic brake. All that said, my take on this scooter, I'm going to break this out into a few categories. First, appearance. This scooter is very nice looking. Visually, it's stunning. The matte light gray paint is distinctive and it feels really good to the touch. It's a very nice looking product and seems premium. The handlebar stem is wider than usual. I would guess about twice as wide as the Xiaomi Mi 365, which seems like that shouldn't matter, but somehow in appearance, it just really makes the scooter look more, again, substantial. But my favorite part of the design is that wide deck. Both of my feet fit comfortably on it, and I'm a 10.5 to 11 shoe size. For portability, the weight is mostly better than similar scooters at this price point, and that's of course the most important thing with portability, so I have to rate this highly. But I would note that folding the scooter is actually pretty awkward. The release lever sometimes is hard to trigger, but once folded, it's easy to carry given the modest weight. My only nitpick in addition to the release lever here is that brake cable is exposed on the outside of the stem and not internal to the stem like some of the competitor scooters. I would have liked to see that internal so that there's just no chance of it getting caught on anything, either while you're riding or while you're carrying this around. For the scooter's range, I found the range satisfactory for the price point, and frankly neither exceptional nor underwhelming. Again, I look forward to testing this under normal conditions, but if you weigh about 220 pounds, or you're just wearing a ton of clothing like I was stuck with, then expect about 13 miles of range under normal conditions. And if you weigh less, of course you're going to get more range. For power, Gotrax's website and Amazon's listing have conflicting information, but specs aside, this scooter is very powerful relative to its mid-tier speed of 15.5 miles per hour. I very quickly get up to speed, quicker than I expect and quicker than I experience on a bird scooter, and it handled very steep hills well. I rode up a walking path that I estimate to be about a 25% grade, very steep, steeper than scooters in this price range are rated for, which is typically 15 to 18%. And I actually got to the top of the hill. Now, of course, I experienced major slowdown, which you can see from my video.
No, I was wrong. Over 10 miles an hour. Nope. 6.5 miles an hour. 6, 5.
My lowest speed was about 5 miles an hour as I reached the top of the hill. But honestly, I didn't expect to get to the top, so I rate this above average for power, given the price point. On the features front, you get standard fare here. The water resistance is nice, but the only notable feature that stands out to me relative to the other scooters in this price range is just, again, that extra wide foot deck. I do like that we get electronic braking, as many other scooters have, even if I haven't yet figured out how to use it. And we get that nice disc braking. And the disc rotor is drilled, which is going to help with friction. And I would just note that slowdown with this scooter is rather smooth. That sums up my review of the Gotrax Ultra XR. Final verdict. As I mentioned, I've only tested the XR Ultra, not the base level XR, but again, my understanding is range is really the only difference, and you know what kind of range you want out of an electric scooter. How far is your commute? Are you just riding the scooter to the bus stop? Are you just riding it a few miles down the road? Are you going farther? That's for you to decide, but I can tell you with the Ultra, at the max weight you can ride these scooters, you're going to get 12, 13, 14 miles. Does that work for you? If it does, then I can recommend the XR Ultra. If you don't need that much range and you're looking to save a few dollars, then consider the XR. It's the exact same build quality, which is a big part of why I'm recommending this scooter. Again, I have more testing I want to do with this when it warms up. I will test this with riders of different weights and report back to you my real world range under more normal weather conditions, and I'll also measure things like stopping distance. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, let YouTube know. Make sure to like and consider leaving us a comment. That helps with YouTube's infamous algorithm to get the word out on videos from smaller independent channels like ours. And if you want future updates on this scooter and all the other nerd stuff we review at Unqualified Critics, make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, and you'll be aware first when we have a new video out. Catch you next time, guys.